Welcome to another episode of the Sidecar Spin. Today I am super pumped to have been able to do a podcast with John Robinson. John is an absolute legend in Australian Sidecarcross. He has won Australian titles, he's raced in Europe, he has done a lot for the sport in his 45 years of racing and just has so much knowledge and so many cool stories about his adventures. And I can't wait for you guys to listen to it. It's awesome. Let's chat to John.
Hello.
Hello, John.
How you going, Tash?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Really
Welcome to the Sidecar Spin podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for jumping on with me.
No worries at all.
How you been?
Yeah, I've been good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How's your wrist going?
Yeah, it's slower recovery than I'd like, but
Yeah.
it's slowly coming good. So
Yeah, what'd you actually do to it?
so I've broken the scaphoid at some stage,
Yeah.
racing and haven't realised, and then it's healed up slightly crooked, and then so what that does is just it just causes arthritis,
Yeah.
and then down the track it just sort of got worse and worse till I had to have the scaphoid was removed, and
Yeah.
they call it a four corner plate fusion. So it'll
geez.
be stronger in the long run, but yeah, just a bit annoying while it heals.
Yeah.
So
Bloody hell.
yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into sidecars?
Yep. So a long time ago, I started off, my brother was racing sidecars and he needed a passenger. So that was back 1978, so
Yeah.
45 plus years ago. So I swung with him. That was on an old Wasp 650M, and we rode for, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 years, and then had a pretty bad crash at Piri where he hurt his back, so he had to stop riding. So then I bought an outfit then and started racing from then on. So yeah.
Is it something that's been in your family, or is it just your brother randomly
No,
started riding?
he sort of started it. So my family was sort of into motorbikes. We had road bikes and stuff, and my dad had road bikes, but no one had actually raced before. So always had an interest there. I'd actually gone and watched motocross sidecars on my road bike with other guys and stuff, and sort of always liked them. But yeah, that hadn't come from that, which in some ways it makes it a little bit tricky getting into the sport because you don't have anyone to guide you, like people who come with their parents and uncles and stuff have been champions, then they get a bit of a head start as far as setting up bikes and stuff like that. So you've got to sort of find your way, but everyone's pretty helpful in sidecars, as you know, once you, if you, just ask, people will help you.
I never really thought of it. Well, it's sort of what's happening with me because I don't have anyone that, I'm just sort of doing it on my own as well. But yeah, I guess it would be pretty hard, to just jump into it not knowing anything about
it
bikes
just makes
or
it a bit
anything
slower,
like that.
doesn't it? You've got to sort of find your way, and whereas, you look at other people in Australia that I've raced with, and you look at guys like Darren Williams, his dad Murray built him bikes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he sort of had things set up, and Darren Robertson had Ray Fisher helping him. It was a fantastic rider, raced solos in Europe, an absolute champion. It was an absolute legend of a guy, and just sort of knew so much,
Yeah.
And be times that we'd be at race meetings, and I'd talk to Ray Fisher, and he'd say, he'd be watching, and from the other side of the track, he'd say, "Oh, your bike's not quite working through that hole right over there." And I'm thinking, wow, how do you see that from the other side, Like, he was just so perceptive with it. You could just pick anything up. So yeah, it gives you, but then again, you find your way. And like I say, if you ask people, they'll all help you and that sort of thing. So
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, even on the weekend, I raced at the Morgan one, and Norm followed me around for a lap, and he's like, he said, "Oh, you're looking pretty good on these bits, and the left ones look good, but you're right. You need to get out a bit more on the side on the right." And then
Yep.
Him and Lara and Brian, like they were all giving me tips and gave me some instructions on the bike, and then I went out and had to go again. But yeah, like he was racing and he noticed what I was doing.
It is. It's just so good, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it's the same as if a rider can get on with a more experienced passenger, or vice versa, a passenger with a rider, you can each, teach the other so much, and you can sort of just jump way ahead, and, stuff that you'll eventually pick up on your own, but it takes ages, whereas someone gives you a heads up and you think, right, okay.
Yeah,
So,
and the way they explain it, sometimes something doesn't feel right, but then when they
yep.
go, oh, this is what you got to do, you're like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, you just need those people to sort of, give you those tips.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, so that was where I started, and then there was a lot of racing in Australia back then, so we used to do sort of about 28, 30 meetings a year.
Wow.
And was like travelling all over Australia, so there were lots of miles involved.
Yeah.
So that was good, but it then from in 1989 was the first time I went to Europe with Simon Chapman, and that's a whole nother ball game. So
how old were you when you first started?
So I was only about 17 or 18.
Oh, yeah. So how long then have you been racing for?
So that was, so it was about 45 years.
Bloody hell.
I've been racing now for nearly 3 years, so yeah, long time.
Yeah. Are you thinking, are you going to come back or?
Probably not, but you know what they say, never say never. So it's still in the blood. You still
once your wrist is healed up, you'll be like,
that's right.
Maybe I can do one more.
Exactly. You never know, do you?
So you started out swinging.
Yep.
And then when did you change over to riding once your brother had the accident?
Yeah, so I'd only swung for about 3 years, so I was about 21 or something like that, and then started riding, bought an old Wasp, was only a couple of seasons old, and put a 4-cylinder cracker back in it in them days, 500, because we used to have 2 classes, so up to 500 and then unlimited. So by running the 500, I could run in both classes. It was called junior and senior back then. So and then we were racing that, and so I've sort of seen it go full circle from, the heavyweight Wasps, what we used to ride, and then right through to lightweight 2-strokes, and started off with the CR500 Honda in VMC sort of back in 85, and then right through all the different lightweights, and then it's sort of turned full circle back into 4-strokes again, and so it's quite interesting the way it's sort of changed over the years.
Yeah, you would have seen a lot of change. Do you think the sport itself has changed a lot in the time?
Yeah, 100%. It was, we've probably been lucky that I've raced at some of the biggest meetings, especially in Europe. Back in the early days was just some huge meetings, and it's incredible. And it's a bit of a shame that it has dropped right off, and sort of as far as Australia now, there's, as you know, you're so involved, there's some positive signs right at the moment. So you just hope that these things go in circles, and you just hope that it will kick back on and come good again. But it's there's a lot of things involved. I always thought that if you could just go into a shop and get down to Kessner's and buy a sidecar, like you can buy a solo, that there'd be so many more. But
100%. I reckon
it's
too.
Just, it's a thing. It's just a lot of work and a lot of setup and that, and people just get put off by that.
Yeah,
so
and I think not being able to just go buy a bike makes it hard. Like I was keen and I was looking for ages. And
that's right.
I was just lucky that I ended up with the bike that I have, because I knew I was already like passenger on it.
Yep.
But for someone that's not involved and wants to get involved, if you're not in the know, then you have got no real chance, really.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it does restrict it. So,
and I guess that also makes it more expensive too, because you can't just go to the shop and go, oh, I want that. And then if
That's
something
right.
breaks, you can't just go, oh yeah, I want that or whatever.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah,
So
no, for
yeah,
sure. Because it's hard. Like randoms can't just get hold of a bike and sort of
that's right. And people can't
practice.
just, so it sort of follows through, doesn't it? That people can't just jump on one and try it. There'd be
Yeah,
so many that, solo riders and stuff back when we were in with the solo meetings all the time. It was so much better that, someone would be looking for a passenger or a guy's just got an interest, or you take them out on a practice day and they jump on, and next thing, they've teamed up and they've got a bike and you've got another team out there. But you don't have that exposure.
yeah,
We've sort of had to go our own way to keep the sport going.
yeah,
But the downside of that is that you don't have the exposure to so many people, whereas the road trials are lucky like that they've still got a fair bit of exposure. But we used to be always in with all the motocross and with the Australian Championships, where we'd be going interstate, and they were big meetings back then. They were televised and stuff, so
yeah,
everybody sort of knew what sidecars were, whereas, now people ask you and
yeah.
half the time they don't even know what it is. Oh, you
No,
race? Yeah. My grandpa used to do that at Rolly Parks. No. That's Speedway, So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, but yeah,
yeah.
but
Well, unless you're involved in it, you wouldn't even know they are still around.
that's right. That's right. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty sad, really, because
it is.
it's such a good sport, and it's
Oh,
like
it
the
is.
community and just everything about it is just awesome,
Yep.
and like the teamwork, and
Yep.
it's good for the kids to do. Like
Yep.
they make heaps of friends, and the
Oh,
teamwork that the
exactly.
kids have, and like
Yep.
my girls are only little, and they love riding around on their sidecar, and
Yep.
it's
Yep.
yeah, it's sort of it's sad. Like I try to do as much as I can because I
Yep.
want them to still be able to have the opportunity, like
Yeah, definitely.
when they get bigger, if they want to race or whatever, that opportunity's there for them.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a bit worrying.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I just hope that it turns around, and but yeah,
Yep.
but I don't know. I think like there's a bit more positive sort of stuff coming back. I think with the
There is.
motocross
Yeah.
side of it too, and
Yep.
like on the weekend there was a few people that um like come out to race that haven't raced for a long time, or I
Yeah.
think one
Yeah.
guy said he hadn't ridden his bike in like 14 years or something.
Yeah, Matt Lee.
Yeah,
He was a top passenger swung for Steve Truscott
yeah,
back in the day, and yeah, he's bought Steve's bike and got it back out. So yeah,
yeah. So that's good. That's a
which
positive.
is sort of the way it works over the years. Even in Europe, when you talk to people, it does follow down through families, and you've got to sort of have a contact to get in it. And then once you do, you think, oh hell, this is good fun. So
Yeah,
yeah, you get addicted, and that's it.
it's
So,
easily addictive.
yeah.
So what would you say was your biggest achievement racing sidecar?
Oh God, that's a
You've done
tricky
a
one.
lot of stuff.
Yeah, that does, and it sort of it changes over the years, right?
Yeah,
So when I first started, Barry Buckley and Russ Elmy were the Australian champions,
yeah,
and they were from here, and so that was like the goal to beat them, and then I beat them. As a B grader in a meeting at Renmark in one of the state title rounds. So back then, to me, that was like the first really good
oh
thing.
yeah, that would have been
And
awesome.
it was, yeah, because it was sort of like,
You're the
everyone
underdog.
would see them as unbeatable. And
Yeah,
yeah, so, but following on from that, if I went to actually the best achievements that I've ever done, they're not actually wins,
yeah,
funnily enough. So I had one of the meetings in Europe. It was Rouget La Chouderie, a place in France, and the club were sort of like really adopted us. They had some just younger kids, and that started a fan club, and they used to follow us around to meetings, and it was really, really
that's
wild.
cool.
And so they were really good. So their meeting was coming up. So most of the French internationals, they have one meeting a year, and they just pump everything into that, right?
Yeah,
So it's a huge thing for them. And so we really wanted to do all right at their meeting. And then we got there and everything just went wrong. We had a crash and practice, and then in the qualifying we got a flat tyre, so then
no.
we're out. So then we have to start from the second row, and just everything was against us, and just had to just go for it. Went for it in the race, and we charged through and ended up getting up to third, and that was just like so good because everyone was cheering for us, even the flaggies were putting their flags down and standing in the middle of the track and waving us on, and there's all air horns going, and the passion of the French is unreal.
Yeah,
So
the atmosphere would have been so
the
cool.
atmosphere was unreal. So that was just one of those races where, you know, over the years you get the odd races where you are just totally in the zone, and you just go on for it, and honestly, you don't care if you crash. You're on such a high. You're just riding right on the edge. And, we had some real close calls, but we got away with it and got up to third. So
did you have another Aussie with you?
Yes, so that was the first time I went, and so that was 1989, and we went over there and did a full season. That was just myself and Simon Chapman. So that was a huge adventure. Like back in them days, you think about it now and you think, wow, that was hard. That shit, what we did.
Well, you wouldn't have had all the luxuries.
There's nothing. There's no mobile phones, no GPS, no mechanic, no help, nothing. You had a manager. You went and met with the manager. You got a folder and a map where the meetings were, and then you'd go there and you'd meet the president of the club or the secretary or whatever, and because all the meetings you'd get start money, and so that would get you from one meeting to the next.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it was so big back then that you would have some days in France there could be 4 internationals on the one day, and so you'd have a pick. And we had a really good manager, and we wanted to race against the best, but, we were outclassed, but there's no point in cherry picking and going to meetings with lesser riders there and winning. I wanted, to race against the best in the world. That was our goal. So that's what we did. And it was just, we had bought an old 608 Mercedes transporter, bike in the back, didn't even have a shower and toilet. You think, oh my God, bought that from John Elliott, guy in England. And the thing, I had done so many, I think about 600,000 Ks. It used more oil than bloody fuel. It was unreal, And
what an adventure.
So, and it was like, we'd already won a lot of races in Australia, but it was just such a shock to the system. The first race was Tours in France. We got there, we had a race that was on the Sunday, and then there was another race on the Monday across the other side of the country. So we've rolled up on the Sunday. Tours, the hill's so steep that they concrete the hill so that you can get up. Otherwise you wouldn't get up it. And the concrete is just left rough. And we just looked at that and thought, oh my God, like we thought we'd raced on tracks with hills in Australia, but we hadn't, these are hills. And you think, oh wow, it's just so hard. And so we raced there, and it was just, I think we went through 4 tyres, just ripped all the knobs off the tyres in the one day, and I'm thinking, oh shit, and we come I still remember the first race, and I've come in from the first race, and someone said, oh, look at Simon's back, and then I said, oh, what, and he turned around, and he'd been rammed by right-hand sidecars and broken all his body armour, ripped his jersey through, and his back's all bleeding and stuff. And Simon's, really good passenger and a hard nut. He never even mentioned it, It just like we got pushed wide, and I thought they'd hit the bike, but they were slamming him.
Oh, Jesus.
And one of the top British guys, Colin Philpott, was talking to us, and he can see what happened, and he come up and he said, oh, look, he said, just as soon as it comes to a right-hander, just hit him back. I said, oh, what do you mean? And he said, oh, these cack-handers there, the British call them, the right-hand sidecars. He said, otherwise they'll just do it to you all the time. He said, you just got to get back. He said, you won't hurt them. He said, they're used to it. He said, the passenger will just get up and then you'll pass them. He said, that's the game, that's the way it works. And I thought, oh. And, at that moment when you sort of realise how serious this is, you have a choice then. You think, well, I go back to Australia with my tail between my legs, or you just man up, and do it. So it's it was full on. So at that time, there were lots of Eastern Bloc riders, so riders from Czech Republic and places like that.
Yeah.
And the only way that they get out behind the Iron Curtain was to go and race. They get a pass out to race for that weekend, and it's all based on their results. So it is so serious for them.
Oh, okay,
In Australia, we're just playing games, but for them, that's their livelihood. If they don't get a good result, they're back working in the mines or whatever the next week, So at that time, it was just so full on. Like, we were in one crash in one of the first races. It's obviously pile-ups all the time, and we're in a crash in the first lap, and there's about 4 bikes, and one of them has spun right round, and the bike is facing back towards me. And so I'm trying to pull my bike back out to take off, and this guy has just got it revving, just flat out, just spinning the back wheel, pushing into us, And I'm looking into his helmet, his eyes, and it's like, oh my God, like, the lights are on, but there's no one home, He's just like, I'm thinking, wow, these guys are nuts.
Yeah.
And well, that's what it was. But then after a while, you actually get used to that, and you just like, you do the same.
Well, if you can't beat them, join them, hey?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And, like, when you get to know the guys, they're so hard on the track, but they're best of mates afterwards.
Yeah.
And, like, you've done fighting, it's the same thing. You sort of full on at each other, but then you've got respect for each other afterwards.
And I know that some of those, because when we trained in Thailand, a lot of Russian fighters and stuff used to train there, and they never smiled, and they always just looked really mean, and we were like, whoa. Yep. But then when we actually talked to some of them, they were actually really nice.
They are, yeah.
But they're just real serious all the time.
Exactly. So that actually, if you asked about the best races I've done, so that one at Rouget where we got third, and then there was another one in Czech Republic, which was a Grand Prix. It was Obernica. And I was lucky that I think that's rated as the biggest crowd ever at a sidecar Grand Prix.
Oh, wow.
So it was 1989, and it was only a few months before the wall came down, but nobody knew that was going to happen, obviously.
Yeah. So
it was still Eastern Bloc. So it was the only way that all the people from Russia and places like that could get to see sidecars. And it was just so huge. I've got photos. It's like some people said 50,000, some said 40, some said 80,000, but I don't know. It was a lot of people. It's just wall-to-wall people. That was absolutely incredible. And
I reckon, did you send me a picture of that? I reckon you might have.
I think I flicked you one.
Yeah, that was insane.
We actually got the first day that we got there, I think it was the Thursday, and we were walking around the track, and we sort of went to take a bit of a shortcut, and we ended up on the wrong side of the fence. And we went to get back in, and then there's these guys come up with bloody, like, Kalashnikov submachine guns, and they wouldn't let us back in. We're trying to explain to them, and they didn't speak any English. I think, oh, my God, we're sort of locked out because there were just so many spectators. They're all, getting set up there. They're all camping on the outside, and they just thought we were someone trying to get a free ticket. And luckily one of the one of the Czech riders recognised us, and he come over and told them and let us get back in there. And like leaving that meeting, there were traffic jams for 9 hours. No one was moving. So
what?
That was incredible.
Wow.
And so that was a Grand Prix.
I couldn't even imagine that. Like, I couldn't even imagine having that many people coming to watch the racing.
No, and just the noise. Every time you come around, the first lap of practice, I went down over this drop-off sort of thing dropping off a jump down the hill, and the bike just got a little bit sideways, no big deal. And all these people are hanging over the fence, waving and screaming. This is only in practice. And I thought, oh, shit, there's something wrong with the bike, and I'm looking down to see if there's something hanging off. No, it's just because we got a little bit sideways. They just love it. They're absolutely
so
passionate
awesome.
about it. Yeah, it's so good.
You'd feel so pumped too. Like, it would just make you just think, this is sick, let's go for it. Like,
it is. And so that was a Grand Prix, and there were 75 sidecars. If you can imagine, 75 sidecars in practice trying to qualify for that.
Wow. Yeah.
And we were that year just running a standard CR500. We had 2 motors, but the week before in Italy, a rock went through the radiators, so we'd seized the good motor. So we had a dead standard motor, and we just didn't have the power. Yeah. And so, especially for qualifying, so in qualifying, it's just you need to do one fast lap. It was time qualifying back in those days.
Okay, yep.
And the track's all smooth in qualifying, so the Zabels and the big KTMs and things like that, they just had an advantage. So we just missed out, I still remember, 1.6 seconds. But they had, because there were 75 sidecars, they had the Grand Prix, and then they have an international race for the non-qualifiers.
Yeah.
So, and that was our last race. We'd been there the whole season. That was our last race. So it was sort of like just throw everything into it. And we started off, we were about 10th in that one out the gate. And I worked our way up to 3rd, and it was, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it was. And the last lap come through, and there was a Czech champion, Novotny, and he hadn't qualified either because he crashed in the qualifying, so he was in our race.
Yeah.
And he charged through and caught up to us with only about 4 corners to go, and he's just slammed Simon and pushed us off the track. Oh, my God. And so there were only a couple of corners, and at the top section of the track there was sort of straights and then U-turns. So he'd slammed Simon, and then we were coming up to a right-hand corner, so I just full on smashed. I thought, nah, we've worked hard for this. So just slammed him back, pushed him off the track, went down over this jump and over the finish line with him behind us. And then he's coming to the pits, and he's just come flying in with his motor revving, jumped off, screaming. He's sort of like come over to me, and we're both screaming at each other, and neither of us could understand each other. And yeah, people have torn us apart. And funnily enough, I ended up really good mates with him. Years later, he's a really good guy. So, I mean, he was, he'd had a bad run as well. And,
yeah.
But yeah, I just, we'd worked really hard. I wasn't getting slammed and not giving it back. So, but the only thing was that, we had probably 60,000 people that were going to lynch us because he was the local hero.
Yeah.
We was the one that unheard of bums from down under.
You have to be sneaking out of there.
Yeah, exactly.
We had that happen to us once. We went down to Sydney for some fights, and my husband fought a local guy, and it was at some Lebanese club, and he was Lebanese, of course, so they were all going for him, and then my husband won, and they were booing us, and we ended up having to wait to the end of the show to leave because we were like, oh my God, they're going to get us.
But, we had that with screaming at each other, and then it was only half an hour later, he's come back over, and I thought, oh, God, here we go again.
Yeah.
And then he shook hands. It was a good race. So it was just a heat of the moment thing. But the thing about over there, though, is that everybody is so passionate about the actual racing. And like I say, you can be back in the field, and if they see that you're trying hard, there'll be air horns going, and they'll pick you out and they'll be cheering for you. Whereas, Australia, we have more of a winners only sort of mentality. You get a bit of the tall poppy syndrome here sort of thing sometimes. But over there, it doesn't matter. They just absolutely love the racing, especially the French. It's just something else. Their passion for it, it's unreal.
It would be cool if we had more spectators and stuff over here, but I don't know. People don't really seem to watch the motocross much, but they do watch the sidecars. When we're at Perry and that, everyone runs over to the gate and oh, cool, sidecars, and wants to watch. But it's just a shame because you need the promotion to get it out there, but it all costs money, doesn't it? So, and we don't even charge for people to even come and watch.
That's right.
It's free.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you say racing in Europe were some of your most memorable moments?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, so like I said, it's just another level again. I mean, I've had a lot of success here, and things like took me ages to win the Aussie title, and just had things going. I sort of won most of the races, but I'd had things going wrong, and so I think it was about 13 years till I won an Aussie title. And so winning that first one, that was like, just ticking the bucket list off.
Yeah.
It was that was just so good. And that back then, that was in with the solo titles, so they were big things. It was the first round was at Crystal Brook, and then the second round was at Traralgon in '93, and so that was a big achievement for me, and that was they were big meetings back then, so that was quite good. But it's sort of, it's all relative, isn't it? Like, you think, you start off and you race at club level and you think, oh, yeah, I'm all right at this. And then you see our state level, oh, no, these guys are faster. And then national level, they're faster again. And then the same thing goes in Europe. You get over there and then you think, oh, my God. And then there's national level with international level and then Grand Prix. So,
yeah, and I suppose you just keep moving those goalposts.
You do. You keep moving. Exactly right.
Yeah,
you
have your little achievements, and then it's like, oh, I just want to beat that person. And then when you do, it's like, oh, now I want to do this. Oh, now I want to do this.
That's exactly right. So for us, it was like qualifying for a Grand Prix was a big thing. And then I went back with Dave Oliver and managed to qualify, and then got a couple of top 20s in Grand Prix. So that was another thing, So
is that what's your highest one that you've got?
Yeah, so 2 Grand Prix, 19th.
Oh, okay,
in 2, one in England and one in Latvia.
Yeah.
So that's the highest in that. Internationals, we've had some a few third places and even one meeting. So the internationals will have. I used to race against a lot of the Grand Prix guys, but obviously you don't get all the best at one meeting.
Yeah.
That one that I was saying about at Rouge, there were 8 countries there represented, so they're still good meetings and really good fun.
You did the Nations too, didn't you?
Yeah.
How'd you go with that one?
Back with Brian, so that was good. So we got 11th overall, so we were I think it was actually equal 10th on points. So that was good, because that's I think Dan Foden was saying to you that the nations he rates as one of the highest, because no one's sort of riding for points or anything like that. It's the last meeting of the year, and it's a one-off. So that was pretty full on.
Yeah,
so,
he said I think he said that was his favourite one to ride.
It was,
and like just the event of it and the way that it all is, and the atmosphere and riding for your country and stuff. It's pretty cool. Yeah,
it is. That was really good, and for us. We went over there, and I had a shoulder injury and stuff at the time. Not that that's any big deal. Most of the guys over there have got injuries and they don't even talk about it. Mm-hmm. But I was sort of having to be wary of that in the meetings that we were doing. And then the Des Nations was our last meeting. And then coming to the last race, the second one, and I said, Brian, we'll just throw everything into this, and whatever it is, it is. And we went out on the first lap in a reasonable position. There were 2 bikes dicing in front of us going down the hill, and they've tangled bars together. It was a right-hander and a left-hander, and one of the Brits has his bike's careered completely off the track to the right-hand side, and then I'm going down the hill. They got spat off, and the bike has come back through straight in front of me, and we've sort of centre punched it, and
shit.
Hit it with the front brake lever, and that managed to stay on, but the brake lever crushed my bloody finger and just about chopped that end of my finger off, and that's all bleeding into the glove, and then I couldn't use the brakes, and I thought, oh my God, this is not good. And I just sort of kept trying, and then after about a lap, I started getting some feeling back, and it's still working. So
still there, hanging on.
Yeah, still going. So we managed to get back to 14th in that one. So and against all the best guys in the world, I think at the start I had the Diamondbacks sitting next to us on the line, and then Valentin Girard, which is one of the best riders ever, sitting behind us, because some of the guys would sit behind to let the other member of their team have the front row start to maximise their points. So you think, oh my God, I'm in pretty serious company here with these guys.
Yeah. So how many times did you go over?
So I've done must be 5 times.
Oh, wow. So
altogether. So the first time with Simon, we did 17 meetings there, and then I went back in 2 years later, did a Carpentania Trophy in Romania, so I did 4 meetings there on a Zabel, and then I went back in 99 with Dave. We did Grand Prix and Internationals, and then Brian was 2014 and 15. That's right, twice with Brian.
Yeah.
So 5 times. So.
And do you stay there for long, like a few months?
So the first time was the longest. So that was the full season, which was 5 months.
Yeah.
The Romania was the shortest one. We did 4 meetings, but it was all in 2 weeks.
Oh,
so
wow.
It was just like one full-on tour, and then the others were a few months each. So
and have you taken? I think Brian said you did take a bike or something.
Yeah. So the last time we did, which is sort of probably my biggest mistake, not taking a bike the first times, because there's so much that is different.
Yeah.
You're really up against it, so you've got, tricky tracks, really good, incredible opposition and everything. So if you haven't got your bike set up, you don't really get time to do that. So, but that's not, that's where our bikes come from. So it's not so easy taking bikes from here over. So that's a bit of a tricky one.
And so when you were there, did you borrow bikes or did you buy a bike when you were there and use it?
Bought bikes and brought them back, except for Romania. We borrowed a bike there. I brought over 2 guys from Germany to do some races here, just to sort of boost things up.
Yeah.
And one of them repaid the favour, and so I sort of set him up with one of the guys here, lent him a bike, and we organised all that, and he did the same for me over there. So that was the first time. The other times I just bought bikes and then brought them back. So.
Yeah, it'd be pretty handy, like once you get to know people over there, and then you can
really
sort of do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and they're all incredibly helpful. It's so much bigger than Australia, but in the same way, it's all sort of just like in one big family.
Yeah.
It's like, I couldn't believe how they'd help you. We were in a van with a world champion showing us what pistons he's running and, his gearing, any question that you wanted to ask, and we were staying with Joe Brockhouse, and it was, 3 times runner-up in the world, and he was sort of helping us out at the start. And I said, Joe, I can't believe. I said, in Australia, some people are a bit funny, They,
don't want to tell you their tricks.
No, they keep secrets and stuff like this. And I said, they don't hear. And he said, no, not at this level. He said, they still do in Europe in the national classes, but he said, once they get that good, he said, they just appreciate you coming home. And he said, they're not actually worried about you beating them because they know, what you'd have to do to try and beat them. You're not going to come out and blow them away. So that was really good. What
do you think has been your biggest challenge?
Oh, God. There's been lots of challenges. So even apart from the racing, it's just like everything involved, getting to the meetings and preparing bikes and all that, So, like, if I go back to that first season in Europe, 89, and to give you an idea, that first race that I was saying that we did in Tours with the concrete hills, then the next day we had another race across the other side of France. So we had to drive through the night. We had no mechanic or anything. The bikes ripped all the knobs off the tyres and off our spare wheel. So I had tyres to change and stuff. So we're driving through the night, no mechanic. The other guys have all got drivers, so they're sleeping in the back of their buses and going. So we're driving through, we've got this old bloody Mercedes, and I'm doing like 140, 150 k's an hour downhill and then 40 kilometres an hour up the other side. It's just like, oh my God. We're driving along, Simon's in the back, bloody, if you've seen a video of it now, you just think, what the hell? He's boiling up pasta, so we've got a big thing of boiling pasta going while I'm driving this van flat out. And because we just didn't have time to stop or anything.
Yeah.
We've got there at 5:30 in the morning, had like 1 hour's sleep, and then I had to change tyres and stuff, get out. And Joe Brockhausen had always said, whatever you do, every track, make sure you walk the track. And so, he said you should walk at least 2 or 3 times, 2 laps, so it's in your head.
Yeah.
And so I had done that, but this day I had no chance of doing that, right? And that was at a place called Plomion in France, with these huge jumps. And the top section of the track was flat, and then it was like just about like a cliff face, and it dropped down to another level.
Yeah.
So we're taking off, we're riding around the top section, I go around a corner, come up, there's a jump, you land on the flat, turn around a corner, back around another one, another jump that looked just the same, but I didn't realise it was right on the edge of this huge drop-off, right? And you'd get to this jump and everybody would just hit the brakes, slow right down, trundle over the jump and then power down the hill.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I just thought it was going to be a flat landing. So I'd launched, and next thing we're just up in the air, and there's just nowhere. It's like I've ridden off a cliff, Oh my God, the bike's just in free fall going down this hill, and it's just twisting as it's going down. Like, oh my God, both thought we were dead. It's finally landed and straightened out. Come around the next lap, and the whole crowd are just standing on that hill, and they're all cheering for us. I just backed right off, looked at them, shook my head.
They probably think you're bloody mad.
Yeah,
they probably thought you meant to do it. Oh, look at these freaking crazy Aussies! What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the sort of thing, when you talk about challenges, what you're up against, and it's but yeah.
Yeah,
I wouldn't change a thing. Fantastic.
Yeah, all the stuff that people don't see in the background, all the bloody chaos that happens behind the scenes, trying to get to places, and all the things that go wrong because people only see you. They see you at the start gate and do the race, and they don't know how you got there.
No, and some racing's hard. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes that's it's not the hardest part. It's just getting there and getting home. Even in Australia. The Euros travel big Ks too, but we did the Queensland titles 4 years in a row, and you're driving back and it's 25 hours. And one of the meetings we did, we've crashed on the first corner. I think you might have seen some of those photos. Nick Higgs was swinging from, actually the guy that you rode with at Perry.
I forgot that you'd sent me those photos, and then I went on with him, and then I was going back through and I thought, hey, that's the bloody guy.
That's him, yeah, exactly right. Small world.
Yeah.
So we've had that crash, big crash, got back up, luckily nothing broken and stuff, and managed to get back through. I think we got 3rd or 4th in that race, and we managed to win, luckily, overall.
Wow.
But then I've had to drive all the way home, 25 hours, unload everything, and and then it's straight back to work because you've got to pay for all this. So it's it's hard sometimes, but what they say, what doesn't bloody kill you makes you better, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it gives you lots of adventures and stories to tell, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. So.
Well, that's like when Nick came down here, he rolls up with his he's got a car trailer with the sidecar and a bunch of other solos that he's been driving for 2 days straight, and then we race, and then he's like packing up like, oh we're off again, another 2 days to get home.
yeah, that's it. And it's a long way, I think in 1 year, was that 93, and we won all the state titles. So that was New South Wales, Victorian, South Australian, Queensland, and the Australian titles, which was over 2 rounds, all in the same year. But that's a lot of travelling.
Oh yeah.
But same thing. It was good, and I did, King of the Cross and. Meetings in Western Australia and the Western Coast Western Classic, and that was the same. Driving back from there, we were out the other side of Euclid, driven all night, and I thought, that was lucky, didn't hit any roos and that. And then it's about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just looking down at the gas gauge, and then a roo has just come out, and we've hit this roo, and we're in a transit with the sidecar in the back, and it's just put the radiator through the fan. So
Oh.
we're stuck in the middle of nowhere out by Euclid, thinking, now what are we going to do?
Yeah.
So leave Simon with the van. I had to hitchhike into bloody Euclid and then get a radiator sent from Adelaide and do it on the side of the road. And it's not always plain sailing. But,
Yeah. Yeah,
and even,
that would suck.
in Europe, when we were there without a mechanic and that, things like that, are just so hard. It's things you don't think of, like when it's wet meetings and cleaning everything up. And like I say, just changing all the tyres and all that. And then you might have another meeting get to, like we did in that first one the next day.
Yeah.
And just qualifying. We didn't have anybody with pit boards. You're in 30-minute races all the time. You don't know where you are when you're mixed in with all this mob. And, you'd sort of work out the people. Like there was one guy there, a German guy, Buller world champion, his son, we'd end up around him sometimes. And I thought, that was really good, because when I'd go past, his dad would always be out there with a big pit board. I could see where we are or what length, what distance it was in the race. And in the end, he got sus at that, so he would sort of put it down when I went through. But, and just like now, qualifying's everything with GPS and stuff, whereas back then it was all done with stopwatches.
Yeah.
So you couldn't complain about it. You'd think, we rode one meeting trying to qualify for a Grand Prix in Italy, and we spent the whole 45 minutes with one of the local guys swapping back and forth. It was virtually the same pace, and then I come back and had a look, and he was 4 seconds a lap faster, and I think, well, how's that happen?
Yeah.
And when that would happen over there, the mechanics would go up and they'd have a big pit board with 5 stopwatches on it, and they'd say, show that, the secretary, that was the lap on that, that was the time on that, and then, they could put in protest, but we had nothing to sort of back that up. So
no support there.
No, that just made it tricky, and even that, I sort of worked out. I got so sick of it, because with the internationals and that, you'd still have to qualify as well, and you'd end up with second row starts, and it just made it so hard. We went to one meeting in Hungary, and the track was a little bit easier than some of the French tracks, and that a little bit more like an Australian track. And so I said to Simon, I'm getting sick of this with the qualifying thing, so we're going to go out first, and that they're getting, and we'll just go flat out to our fastest laps for the first or second lap, and that they have to time them, because otherwise they just, who's this Australian guy? They might take one lap, in 45 minutes you might have done lots of faster ones, but no one's even timed you. Elbowed our way up, went out first, went flat out, had a couple of moments, but come back in, and we actually qualified fastest. And I thought, well, there you go. That's sort of, that swapped around from getting second row to making sure that you get your good lap in.
Is it heaps like crappy starting second row?
Yeah, it's hard. But the most I raced against was, sometimes the French sort of make their own rules, so it wasn't always 30 sidecars. It was 42 sidecars at one international with 3 rows. So
3 rows.
You start off on the 3rd row, and you're up against it, So.
Yeah, bloody hell. And is it just the fact of just trying to get through everyone, or just starting behind like a bunch of people like that? Like, you're just getting roosted and just
it's both. I mean, the just being able to see is a big problem sometimes. They do a pretty good job generally with dust and that, but you get some meetings where, we rode at this place in France, La Couronne, and this fast corner, and you just could not see a thing. And I was seeing this flashing, and I worked out what it was. Afterwards, I seen the flag. He had this big mirror, and he was flashing the mirror through when there was a crash into the dust.
So people could see.
Yeah, and we were in one pile up, and there were 14 sidecars when the dust settled, sort of thing.
Shit.
So, oh my God.
Oh God, have you been into many like pile-ups and stuff like that?
Yeah. Especially back then, there were lots of crashes, and I was really thankful. I mean, the worst thing, you spend all that money to go over there, and put everything into the season. The worst thing would be to just, break something and then have to go home straight away, and it's all sort of wasted. So yeah, we rode at Rudersberg in Germany, and we got just taken out, just totally taken out, going into a right-hander. The guy slammed so hard, like his chair bars hit my foot and jammed it in between the case and the motor and flipped our bike completely over and broke the bones in my foot and shit. So ended up, and that was a bit of a funny one too, because ended up in the hospital at Rudersberg for that week, and then we signed ourselves out because we had a meeting with really good start money in Italy, jingly the following week. So I thought, that's right, I think I can do this. So we signed ourselves out, and sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. We got a clearance from a doctor, and I didn't even actually see a doctor. We had one of the German guys I knew had brought me this bloody cream, and he said, just smear all this all over, it'll take the swelling down. And it was some cream from a vet that they use for bloody horses. So, yeah, we went there, and I cut the plaster off in the morning before practice and whacked the boot on, and away we went. And the president of the club actually came up when I was on the line for practice, and he said, I'd heard that you guys had a big accident last week in Germany. I said, no, it wasn't too bad. And I mean, they're worried because they're paying you reasonable start money, and they don't want you rolling up and just taking off and taking the money. And he said, you sure you're okay? I said, yeah, no, we're all right. And we actually went all right. I think we got 8th or something in one of the races, and we ended up top 10 there. But the worst thing about that was coming in after the race, and my foot had just swollen up. I couldn't get the bloody boot off. So
no.
Got through the day all right.
Well, boots would be like a bit of a plaster, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
solid.
So it sort of held it all together.
Yeah.
And while you've got the adrenaline and the endorphins going, it's no problem.
Yeah, you worry about it. You worry about it after.
Worry about it afterwards. So that was a bit ordinary, but yeah.
And you said that there was lots of crashes back in the day. What do you reckon that? Do you reckon that was like bikes being not as good as they are now, or just lack of skill, or just people were just crazier, or more bikes?
Just the whole intensity. Like I say, that back then the Eastern Bloc guys, there's a lot of desperation.
Yeah.
The fact of having to get the start money, and sometimes the tracks, like I love the French meetings and the passion, the air horns and all the rest is absolutely incredible, but they're not always the safest. We're sitting on one start line, and I'm looking and I'm thinking, wow, they widened the start gate, but like the 3 or 4 outfits on the left-hand side, you're looking straight at the control tower. And I'm thinking, what's going to happen here? So you all have to funnel in. I mean,
everyone wants to win. So
everyone wants to win or get through it, and not everyone fits, so there's going to be pile-ups. They don't mind that because it's a spectacle,
Yeah.
So it's, And,
it's not like, here, like, I just sort of let everyone go and I'll just go at the end because I don't want to get tangled up with everyone in the, the serious people. But if everyone's serious, then you're like no one's going to chicken out.
Exactly. And there's a big variation in pace, when you're looking in Australia and even lots of national countries, whereas you look over there and you think, like I said, that 175 sidecars, and we missed out by, 1.6 seconds. When you think you've got a whole field within 2 seconds, it's, that's pretty competitive. So, and when it comes down to that, something's got to give. So, but that's the spectacle of it, and it's incredible to watch and just absolutely incredible sport.
Have you always been one to like get the whole shots and stuff?
No, I've got lots of starts here, but over there it's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. You've got people with better bikes and people that are just incredibly talented. Yeah, a lot of times, you've just got to fight through over there. And
but here you would have jagged it lots, yeah.
Yeah. had my fair share here, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of it, depends on bikes and that sort of thing too. So
Like here, what is it up to? What is it up to 1,000 cc's or something
yeah,
here,
I
isn't
think
it?
it's 1,000 or 1,200 or
Yeah.
something here. It's still pretty high. So
Yeah.
it's, I mean, that's not really going to limit it. It's really the power to weight. When I look through, in my time, at the time there were 1,000. I was racing 1,000 Yamaha, and all the guys, that was probably the most popular thing. Wasp made their own motor, which was 1,000 cc. There were 1,000 cc jumbos and Folans, two-stroke twins back then, and
Yeah.
then the limit got brought back, and they were down to 750. But a lot of those first things, like the air-cooled jumbos and that, they were just absolute beasts, just about unridables. At the end of the day, it's all about outer weight. When I think back to the early bikes, and they all sound fast and that sort of thing, but they don't really have the acceleration and the G-forces.
And they're that heavy.
That's right. It's all power to weight. You got
Yeah.
something that weighs 220 kilos compared to 170. It's a big difference. So,
Yeah.
for sure.
How many different bikes have you had over the time?
Oh God, I don't know. It'd have to be 25, 30 maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of sidecars, yeah. Lots of different ones. So, here in the 80s and early 90s, I'd be buying bikes. It was really good back then because you're using two-strokes, so you could buy new solos and use all the stuff out of them. And so I'd be buying new frames every couple of years sort of thing. That was... in one way, I really liked that because it was a really competitive time, in as much as, there wasn't such a variation in bikes. So everyone had very similar stuff. So,
Yeah.
myself and Trevor Anthony had the same bikes, come over in the same crate with the same motors, and Darren Robertson had one the same, and then there was like Billy Williams and Darren Williams and people like that had CR500s, so there wasn't really a great deal of difference between them. And then Terry Gunter was making bikes like replicas of them, so it was a really even field, which that makes for the best racing, I reckon.
Good competition then. So who would you say has been your biggest influence over all the years? Everyone says you. To everyone else, they say it's you. So who's yours?
So that has also sort of changed.
Yep.
Through the years, but if I had to pick one person, it would be in Europe the first time, and also the second and third times, was a guy, Otmar Königsdorfer, a German guy, and he was just like the best guy. We trained with him, we raced all over Europe, and was just so hard on the track and with the training.
Yeah.
But he was the most fun person ever. His nickname was the King, and he would be. The night before a Grand Prix, he'd be the one in the beer tent climbing to the top, and just and he organised meetings that we did, the Romanian thing. He organised all that, and he was just such a good guy, and he was so hard on the track. Like you don't do an outside pass or anything like that. He'd push you off, and then we'd do the same to him. But then we'd laugh about it when we got off the track. He was the hardest guy, and even the training and that was a whole nother thing. Like before I went to Europe, I trained seriously, and I didn't even eat, any sugars or fats and stuff, and did a special diet for 5 months before I went, and obviously no alcohol and all that sort of thing. So we get it, and he said, "Oh, do you want to come out tomorrow?" We go to the gym, and then we go for a bike ride, and we do. I think, oh yeah, this is great. So we go to do this gym session, and then they'd work really hard, and then they'd leave the gym, and he'd say, "Oh, we go across the road now," and they go in the pizzeria, and they're just drinking these great bloody 1 litre things of warm beer, and I think, oh my God, like my stomach's still in a knot from the gym, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't do that.
Training
I'll train
so
with
they
you,
can
but
go
I can't.
drink all that.
But he was such a good guy, and Unfortunately, he had a crash in a Grand Prix and got paralysed from it and was in a wheelchair, but it still didn't stop him. He raced quads and stuff after that.
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately died a few years ago. But
Yep.
yeah.
No.
So he would be my biggest influence.
Yep.
If I said like Australia-wise, I mean, there's so many people here that I won't list them because riders and passengers because I'll miss someone.
Yeah.
But Trevor Anthony would be like my most respected rival because we just waste so much together. And a lot of races so close, you know, like the Ballarat Australian titles 2 years in a row. They were over 3 races, and both years we won 1 race each, and then it come down to the last race. And I think in 1 year, Trev got tangled up with Darren Williams and crashed in the first corner, and I got the whole shot and I was out, and then my steering damper bloody bracket broke.
Oh, no.
And so that blew. And then the next year was the same. We had 1 win each, and I got a flat tyre in the last one, but you know, I still don't know whether I would have beaten him anyway. Trev was just so good, but we just had such good races, you know. In one of those, I've got film of it, and we swapped the lead 5 times. You know, we just pulled away from everybody else, and he was the sort of guy that you could race big jumps and just 1 inch away from him, and just totally trust him. You know, and we just totally trust each other, and it would be so close. And you know, it's just not. There's a lot of other fast riders, and I wouldn't say that about everybody.
Yeah. Some people
a
are a
lot
bit
of guys
sketchy.
a lot of guys you'll give them a berth, but yeah. So Trevor was really good.
So would you say he was the one that you had your best battles with over all the years?
Yeah, overall.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And then, you know, sort of like as far as the Europeans, just so many good riders, and I sort of over the years try to be like a bit of a sponge, just soak up a little bit and learn from anyone, you know, because you still keep learning stuff. And there was a French rider, Valentin Girard, and this guy was so good. You know, if you ever look at any old videos, just look him up, and he was just technically perfect on a sidecar, and you could just learn so much from watching him. Just absolutely incredible. He would do things that were just not normal on a sidecar. So, you know, say what we're on a left-hand sidecar where everybody gets out. You know, you both hang out to the left to turn left, and then I'd see him at times and he's hanging off to the right, like on the opposite side, and I think, what the hell's he doing? And then you study it, and he's doing it to get traction. Yeah. And I've seen a riding school done by him, and he was explaining that to people, and I thought, you know, couldn't understand it, but you can still sort of just work it out from watching, just, and like his jumping and just the way he would, you know, ride a bike, absolutely incredible, you know. And then, you know, gets on backs, Daniel Williamson, you know, it just goes on, and you know, the passengers over there are just next level too. Nicholas Mousset, Ben Van den Bogart, Casper Strublis, it's just incredible. You know? Like, it's funny talking about the cutting my plaster off, and like I said, that's not really any big deal because they all do that. Like here with some people, they'll come out and it's just about like a couple of people have got like an excuse book, you know, it's like this happened and that happened. And over there, that doesn't happen. They never say anything, but they've got the most massive thing going on. There's people riding with broken bones and stuff, you know. Have a look at some of the videos and photos that I've seen of Casper Strublis, and, you know, the things that they can do, and you'd think, oh, wow. And, you know, you ride with them guys and you think, oh, just shut up and get on with it. You know, like everybody, same as with having, you know, problems with your bikes. Well, they just keep going, you know, like just...
That's the thing, though. You just got to do it. There's no, like, if you want to do it, you just do it. It doesn't matter. And,
exactly.
like, you know, if you know... We used to do it in fighting. Like, we've had fights with broken toes and broken feet, broken nose. It's like, oh, well, got to fight. Doesn't matter. Worry about it after.
Exactly. And,
worry about that next week.
We were talking about, like, how hard the Russians were and people from Eastern Bloc countries. Well, if you look from Latvia, Christos Sergis was multiple times world champion, and between him and Daniel Williamson was some of the best battles ever, right? And he was just so hard, that guy, you know, and he rode later on in the years, he rode a Mifo, and Willie, my friend, used to sponsor him and help him out, and he was in a Grand Prix, and he landed so hard off a jump that he snapped the left-hand side of the handlebars off and kept riding and finished 13th in a Grand Prix with one handlebar. I'm thinking, oh, my God, how's that even possible? You know,
yeah. You just got to do it.
It's just that never give up attitude, isn't it?
And that's the thing, you don't know what can happen.
That's right.
You never know, like, you know, other people might be having problems that you don't know about too. And if you just stick it out, you might end up in a better position than what you think.
Yeah, for sure.
So have you ever gone back to swinging, or you've just stayed riding once you started riding?
No, I just stayed riding. Yeah. Swinging's too hard. No, I've done, you know, a few laps here and there practicing, but those guys are just a top passenger. It's just, you know, that's next level.
Yeah.
They're a special breed, that's for sure.
And so your last passenger that you had was Brian.
Brian.
Yeah.
Yep.
And how long did you have, like, how long were you guys matched up?
I think we must have ridden together probably for about 8 years.
Okay, yeah, fair while.
Like my three best passengers would be Dave Oliver, Simon Chapman and Brian. So 3 passengers that I've been to Europe with. Yeah. And all of them, I rode probably about 8 years each with them.
Yeah.
Give or take. So, yeah. But that's, you know, as you know, that's just that's a whole other relationship that you've got to build up. And, you know, people that are not into the sport, they don't really understand, you know, and especially in Europe, when the fields are so big and it's so full on, like I say, you get to stages where there'll be a crash in front of you or something, and you've got to make a split-second decision, left or right, and that's fine. But your passenger's got to make that same decision. You know, you get just about like a sixth sense,
telepathic.
Yeah, exactly. You do, you know, and especially bikes these days are just so good and precise. Back in the old days with the big wasps, you know, your passenger can get thrown a bit and you don't really notice it if they don't get right over on a right-hander. The bike's got so much weight from the motor and it's so low, centre of gravity, it'll turn anyway. The bikes now are not like that. Yeah. You know, like, you know, if Brian will pull a tear-off, I'll know where he's done it. You know, I'll just feel something weird go with the bike, you know, and it's the same, you know, when you get tired, you know, like, I've always put a big emphasis on training and people think, you know, people wouldn't go out and ride if they had a blown shock absorber on their bike, but they don't realise that yours and your passenger's legs are just like 4 extra shockers on the bike. Yeah. So when they stop working properly, the bike, you know, stops handling right. And, you know, we've always done long sessions and that, practicing it, and you get to feel, you know, I could feel when Brian was getting tired and vice versa, he could with me, you know. So
yeah, well, you sort of feel that they'd probably getting a bit more heavy-footed and a bit more
that's
sluggish.
Right, yeah. And the bike, it does it, you know, the back suspension and the chair shocks stop working as well on rougher tracks because your legs aren't soaking it up. So, yeah.
Training, you do lots of cycling.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I still do.
Is that probably the main thing that you do for racing?
Yeah, it is. I swim, still swim a couple of times a week, and I mean, at my peak in racing, I'll do swimming, cycling, and gym work as well. Yeah. But it's a matter of, you know, fitting everything in. Your cardio is so important, you know, that, you know, when you've got good cardio, your thinking works, everything works. And, you know, that's the same as the racing. It's all relative. You start off and, you know, you think you're fit and you think, you know, I can do all that. And then I trained with guys, cyclists that were, medalists in the Olympics and Commonwealth Games, and you think you're okay on a bike, and you go out with them guys, and you think, oh my God, I've never really trained hard. This is proper training,
Yeah.
And yeah, it does. So cycling is really good, and it's you've got to do some upper body as well. I think obviously time on the bike is the best, but you can't be doing that all the time. So try and race on weekends, but do the rest through the week, and and it's funny. It's all a bit of a mindset too. So you sort of I haven't even raced for 3 years, and I still do 3 to 400 k's a week on the push-in, still swim a couple of times a week, and not even any reason to do it. I'm just addicted to it.
But I reckon you'll race again.
Yeah, you never know.
At least you'll be fit. You won't even have to do anything. You haven't even blown out. You'll be like, sweet, you just jump straight on and go for it.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny if we're talking about mindset of riders and passengers. So Dave Oliver moved here from New South Wales to swing for me.
Yeah.
And like I say, I went and did Grand Prix and stuff with him, and big commitment, really good guy. He stopped racing, moved back to New South Wales, and I hadn't seen him for a couple of years. We'd sort of talk occasionally, and I was doing 3 Peaks, which is the hardest one-day bike event in Australia, and it's 4,500 metres of climbing and 245 k's.
Yeah.
So I'm driving over to do that. Obviously, I've been training for it for about 4 months, and as I'm heading there, I get a call from Dave. And how you going? He said, guess what I'm doing? He said, I'm on my way to 3 Peaks. And I said, yes, so am I. I'm about 2 hours away. Neither of us had any idea that
you still had that same joint mindset.
Yeah, exactly. So just, okay. Not racing, but we'll still punish ourselves. So,
yeah, there's something about that, punishing yourself. I'm one of those people as well. Like, why do I do this? I don't know. I love the pain.
yeah. Well, it's sort of like the achievement afterwards, isn't it?
Yeah.
When it's all over, If it's got to be hard to enjoy it, I reckon.
Yeah, that's why I like being a passenger as well, because I'm like, it's so hard, but because it's hard, that's what makes it so fun.
That's right.
Even though at the time you're like dying, but like afterwards you're like, that was sick.
Definitely. It's the achievement in it, isn't it? It's like, people that do triathlons and Ironman and something like that. I mean, they could do sprint events and shorter events, but it's that achievement of doing something that's really hard and really pushing yourself to the limit.
Yeah.
And then it just feels so good afterwards, doesn't it?
The challenge of it.
Yeah.
Speaking of challenges, what track do you reckon would be probably one of the most challenging tracks that you've ever raced on?
Track. So, Europe, there's lots of challenging tracks.
Yeah.
So Australia would probably be Traralgon in Victoria, because it's got the hills, and when we're in with the solos, I noticed it got the solo national titles there again this year, actually. The track would be really chopped out. That was just rough and hard and good going. So, that's probably Traralgon for Australia. Our tracks have sort of, dwindled off a bit and get a little bit goat tracky and narrow on that. There's still some good tracks around, but, and the Europe ones, well, people think that the sand tracks are harder, but physically, I found like the French tracks just really hard, just from the G-forces and the up and down hills, and you're so on the limit with it.
Yeah. And are they the ones with all the big rocks and stuff as well? Yeah. Just
I've got photos of walking around one of the tracks before we raced in France, and I'm holding a rock up, and it's the size of a football, and it's just like this, look like a bloody rocky beach or something. Oh my God, so and well, we do get that here sometimes too with some rocks, but nothing to what they are over there.
Like Brian, he was saying how he got whacked in the eye with a rock when he was with you.
At Cramlin, that's where they had the Grand Prix last weekend, and yeah, he copped the beauty there. Yeah, I think he touched on it as well, but yeah, that was a bit strange because he's sort of saying slow down. So I've sort of backed right off, and then he's saying go, and then he's saying slow down. I was thinking, what the hell is going on here? But yeah, his goggles, I think, were filling up with blood, and he couldn't see. And then I had like the other Aussies, Trevor and them are on the side of the track, and they're all telling me to slow down because they thought he was passing out. And then he's telling me to keep going. And I'm thinking, oh God, this is getting a bit tricky.
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's your favourite type of like track and terrain to ride on?
I like when I say about the French tracks with the hills and that sort of thing. I hated it when I first got there because they were just so technical and so tricky. But once you get to ride them a bit, you absolutely love them. Yeah, so I just love the steep hills and the big jumps and that sort of thing. It's just great fun.
So are they more like the natural terrain sort of?
Yeah. But it's got a bit of both now, the way that it's gone, because the French will build the big tabletops and stuff as well as the natural terrain. So yeah, you get the best of both worlds. Yeah. And you have a look at the meeting last weekend from Cramlin, the Bruniers, the jump that they've cleared. Oh my God!
Oh yeah, I did see that. That was insane.
Yeah. That was
and all the other guys behind him sort of went to the middle because it was like a 3 sort of bump, and they just meowed straight over. It was like, whoa! Yeah, those guys are getting really good.
Yeah, and I heard a podcast just yesterday with Brett Wilkinson. Yeah, and he was saying that they had a go at it and hit it absolutely as fast as their bike would go, and landed a metre short.
Oh wow!
And when you've seen Brett, he's just like the craziest, fastest guy ever over jumps, and like the best motor. He's got like a full works KTM. So you think if his bike was flat out and he wasn't clearing that is just beyond huge. That's some of them jumps, and what it's like. The video always takes away from it.
Yeah.
But if you see it in real life, you think, oh wow.
Oh, yeah. When I was first watching sidecars, like out at South Coast and stuff, like even like Lara and Brian clearing the big tabletops out there, that was giving me anxiety. And those tabletops are nothing compared to those ones on those French videos.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
crazy.
That's huge.
So over the years, I guess you would have had some really funny moments and things happen.
Yeah, lots.
Have you got any funny stories?
So some of the European ones. So I'll give you one example. In one French meeting, we used to collect the posters. They'd have all posters around the town. That was their main advertising, right? And everywhere. So we'd take a poster from every meeting that we did as a souvenir. So we've gone out to the track, and like I say, that's their one big thing for the whole year. So all the people from the club are there working on the track. Go out and I go into the club rooms and say, I want a poster. They don't speak English, so I'm sort of explaining. And then this guy comes and I thought, must have been the president of the club. He said, yeah, no worries. So we get in he said, come with me and I'll take you. So he's gone up to the entrance to the track, and they have one huge poster at the entrance, like probably 2 metres by 3 metres, this massive poster. So he's taken that down for us, right? Oh. And I thought, oh, that's a bit strange. He said, no, that's all right. And anyway, so rolled it up, we've taken it, and he had this little car, which was a 3-wheeler car like they have over
like
there.
Like Mr. Bean or something.
Yeah, really strange thing, right? So he said, yeah, come with me. So we locked up the motorhome, come and jump in with him. And I'm sitting in the front. In the back were no seats, right? And there were all these beans. It looks something a farmer, and it's full of beans. And Simon's in the back. And I said, no, passengers in the back. And then this guy's going crazy around these dirt corners. Simon's sliding from side to side in the beans. Right, I'm thinking, oh, shit, what's going on? Anyway, leave the track, and he said, I've got something to show you, and just, broken English. So he's driven down, and he's driving for miles, and then he stops and he pulls up at a pub. And I thought, what's going on here? And we're trying to work it out, right? So anyway, stops the car, walk out, goes in this pub, and he's talking away to him. We're still trying to work out bloody what's going on. And then the guy from behind the bar has gone out the back, and so he's walked around behind the bar. He's opened up the cash register, grabbed some money out, and he's handing out drinks and stuff. And I said to Simon, this guy must be the owner of the pub, right? He's coming. This must be his pub. So, fair enough. And anyway, stay there for a while, and then we leave there, and he's, no, got to show us more things. And we're thinking, what's going on, right? So he drags us. We go down to his work, which was this big printing press. We're going, what we didn't realise, right, this guy was pissed as a fart, right? He was paro. We did not. We felt so stupid afterwards, but he just can't understand the language, so we didn't know. So he's gone into his work to show off the Australian writers that he's got, right? So he goes in this big printing factory and he clocks on. And then we go in and he's showing us and he's meeting people and they're all sort of looking at us a bit funny. And then he's changing things around and mucking around with things. I think, oh, my God. Then we've left there and we've just gone from one place to another. And then we've gone to another pub where he's getting some tea and stuff. And he's sitting there, he's drinking. And we're trying to bloody work out, talk to him and write things, trying to do it. We just can't work anything out. And anyway, finally this waitress comes out that can speak English. And I said to her, look, we've been with this guy for hours. And I said, we can't understand a word. He's trying to tell us something. Can you tell us what he's saying? And so she's talking away and she comes back and she said, oh, no, I can't. And I said, what do you mean? Isn't it French? And she said, yeah, but I can't understand him. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, oh, he's too drunk. I thought, oh, my God. No
He's
wonder.
went on a wild goose chase with some random
Yeah,
drunk dude.
and we're miles from the track. I don't even know the way back to the track. We haven't got our van or nothing. So then we leave the pub again, and he's heading off, and we go up into the hills. We're heading in the bloody mountains in France. He's taken us to his house. Gone into his house, right? And we walked in, and his wife's there. This is, I don't know, 10 or 11 o'clock at night by now probably, right? He's gone to the cupboard and got out some alcohol, and he's saying something to her, and he's wanting to give us a drink, and we're not drinking. Next thing, it's turning this big argument. She's screaming at him, and she's just giving this full-on slap across the face, right? There's this big domestic. I'm thinking, oh, my God, now what we get? We don't even know where we are. Oh, God. So, yeah, finally, after the argument, it finally it took us back. I don't even know how we bloody got back safely to the van. So, yeah, it was something else.
Jesus.
So, yeah, some of the things. And then, Romania, we had a big one there. Oh, my God. So we've raced in Romania and we teamed up with the German team. So we had both sidecars on a big trailer, all in their van, right? So we're leaving. We're all staying at this hotel. So we leave the track and Otmar that I'd said that organised it all, he said, oh, look, don't drink here, it's 0% alcohol and it's serious. So that's all right. And, I wasn't drinking anyway, but one of the German riders he'd only had a couple of beers, but he'd had a couple of beers and he was driving. And anyway, we're going down through this bloody city or whatever in Romania, down this big hill, and I'm sitting right up the back, and I just seen this guy walking this big 4-lane road from the right-hand side of the road, and he's just walking not even looking where he's going, just swinging his arms. And I'm thinking, shit. And anyway, I yelled out, and he did. Sure enough, he's walked straight in front of us, and we've hit him.
Oh, no.
And, yeah, so didn't know, just heard the thump, didn't know whether he's gone under the trailer or what had happened, right? And think, oh, my God. And then the German guy driving, he's gone into panic, and so he's just hit the throttle and just kept going, didn't stop. Right? I think, oh, no, this shit's just getting worse. And then he's trying to work out, and he's saying, oh, John, you're the only one that hasn't been drinking. You say that you're driving. And I said, oh, no, I'm not doing that, getting locked up in a bloody Romanian jail.
For running someone over a hit and run.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get a bit further down the road. We're getting chased by this big bus, one of those big articulated buses, right? The guy had seen it happen, so he's chased us. He's coming out and he's trying to pull us over with a bus full of passengers. It's like bloody a scene from the movie Speed, you know. I think, oh my God, this guy's there. Anyway, so we've all just said, oh, pull over. So he's pulled over, and this angry bloody Romanian bus driver's got out, and he's shouting and screaming at us. Couldn't understand a word. The passengers are shouting at us. Anyway, I said, well, go back. So we turned around, we've gone back to this guy, and the guy's still laying on the road, screaming, bloody carrying on, right?
Oh,
so
God.
This is another one again. This guy was paralytic, and that's why he just walked straight out, not looking where he's going.
Oh, no.
And it turned out we just clipped him. Luckily, he didn't go under the bus, under the trailer. He got sort of bounced off, broken his arm, but luckily that was all that was wrong. So we finally found somebody, you know, big crowd had gathered before we got lynched. We found somebody that could speak English, and they found out from him, got an ambulance and all that, got that sorted out. So we've had it off and said, oh, look, go back to the hotel where we're staying. I said, you better go in and just have a drink, and then, you know, when the police come, just say, oh, no, you just had a drink afterwards to calm your nerves. You hadn't had anything beforehand.
Yeah.
So that's what he did. That was our plan. Everything was real good. And we're in this nightclub just sitting there talking and that, and then late that night, in come these detectives, grabbed him. They said, oh, did anybody else actually see the guy get hit? And Simon, my passenger, had looked in the mirror from the back and actually seen the guy get clipped. So he said, yeah, I did. So oh, that's right, you come with us as well. So he took the two of them away, took their passports off of them, and then this big you know, questioning session sort of thing, interrogation for that night. And it was, really funny afterwards it was funny, not at the time.
It would have been scary as.
Oh, yeah, scary as, because, like, you don't want to be in a Romanian jail, trust me. It's you know, not the best. And this guy, when Simon, my passenger, come back, he was giving us the rundown, and he said, oh, you know, this detective, he was just like, you know, Inspector Clouseau out of the Pink Panther. It was so weird. And Simon said he's standing at the front of the bus and he's got his finger, and there's, you know, where moths and things have hit the bus, and he's saying, what is this, you know? Simon said, oh, it's a moth. And then he kept asking the same question again and again. He said, no, it's not his blood, you know. And then he was trying to say that we'd ran over him. And then he said, we've got the technology to find out if you were drinking 8 hours beforehand, you know.
Oh.
He said, you know, we're really advanced here. I mean, this was in Romania in 1991 when, you know, there were still people driving around with bloody horse and carts, and, you know, they didn't have heating in a lot of houses and stuff like that. But he's telling us they had the technology. Anyway, so they sort of, they got kept there for a while, and then the guy that had organised it all, he just sort of hung them out for a little while, let the driver think about it for a while, and then he bailed him out, and he said a bit of a bribe sorted it all out. In the end, nothing happened. So, yeah,
you made it to your next race.
Yeah, we got to the next race. But yeah,
God.
that was. But there were just, you know, there were in that time there were so many things like that. Like, once in Austria, I used to. We obviously no mobile phones, so we'd race, and then I'd try and find a phone box the next day, and even that was hard, you know, the old putting the money and trying to get through to Australia and that from those sort of countries. So we were in Austria, and I'd rang up my Mrs. Chris and given her all the rundown. The only place I could call from was in the post office. So I'm standing in the post office. The postmaster had come out, and he started yelling at me something in Austrian. And I said, oh, look, I can't understand you. And he just keeps yelling and waving his arms around. Anyway, I'm just trying to get him in one conversation for the bloody week and tell her about the racing and all that. So in the end, I've just, you know, got sick of it and told him to piss off. And he's back behind the counter and he's carrying on and he's yelling. And when I've walked outside, we used to have big tanks in the vans, because when we were racing in the Czech countries, we'd get diesel and stuff, and, you know, you'd sort of do what you could to make it to the next race. So we had these big tanks full of diesel, and because I was on such a slant, the diesel had ran out, and the whole road was just covered in bloody hundreds of litres of diesel out of my bus, and, you know, they were right into their conservation and that sort of thing there. So yeah, it didn't go down too well. So that's, if I'd have been understand him, it wouldn't have been too bad. But yeah, that's what he was screaming about. There were so many things like that with the language barrier.
Oh yeah, I bet. You're lucky you bloody made it out of there alive.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, so many times like that, you know.
Wow. Yeah. God, what an adventure.
It was. It certainly was. I mean, the last times that I went back was just that side of it was so much easier these days. You just punch into your phone where you want to go, and you know, up comes Google Maps, and you can punch translation in there and work everything out. So
yeah, and I guess a lot more people can speak English now as well.
Yeah, that's right. So I found over there, you know, a lot of the like especially in Germany and Switzerland, places like that, the young people can all speak English, so they do it in school, and that wasn't so bad. But in France, it wasn't the case, and especially a lot of the country areas where you're out with the farmers and that sort of thing. It's a lot of signs and sign language, and you know, we would go to our one thing after racing all week would be go to a restaurant somewhere in France on Sunday night after the races, and we'd we worked out that we were getting horse sometimes, I think.
Oh,
you know, cheval, I think they called it. So we'd go into butchers and we'd look at the little pictures and say, look at that, that's bloody horse. That's probably what we've been eating. So then we'd go in and we'd draw little pictures of cows or fish or sheep to make sure that we get what we want, you know. So,
oh, God. Did you eat snails?
I did try them once, yeah. So that's the club that I was saying about, the Rouget Club, they put on a big special club dinner for us one night, and it was their big thing, all lined up on these tables, this whole restaurant. And sometimes it's like embarrassing because you've got these people and they just watching you for every move, and you know, it's really good, but it's a bit strange all the same. And so, everybody wanted to ask us questions and do all that sort of thing. And they said, we've made you this special tea. And they'd made like lamb's fry type thing. And Simon just couldn't eat it at all. And I sort of forced it down. Oh, God, yeah. And especially the French, like they eat it raw with the blood dripping out of it. So, it was a bit strange. when we go to places, we keep sending our meat back because they'd sort of flip it twice on the fryer and then give it to you. And, more.
Yeah.
So try to get them to cook it a bit more. Yeah.
They're probably thinking, what's wrong with these Aussies? Bloody hell.
Yeah. I just did think of one more. It was just an interesting one in a race. So that one in Hungary where I said we qualified fastest, they had this massive storm. So we got third in the first race. Should have actually won that one because we were running second for the whole race. And then there was coming up the last lap, there was a big puddle on the track and the chair bars had got wet and Simon had slipped on the first lap. And don't go through there again. I'd sort of had that in my head. And got another guy from third, went through it, just took a chance straight through all the water and passed the both of us. So that's all right. We got third, but we were going okay. So I thought, we've got a chance of doing all right in the next race. And then this massive storm came in, and it was just like biggest thunderstorm you've ever seen. Lightning actually hit the hill at one stage, just went off like an explosion.
Wow.
And there was just all these rats drowned. Talk about the same drowned rats. They were coming up, just running past us, because all their holes had got flooded. And so they actually had to abandon the whole meeting.
Oh, what?
And so I thought, that was a bugger. Anyway, we're just standing around, about to pack up our stuff and that, and we're talking with all the Germans, and they said, this is shit. We still could have raced. Anyway, one of them went out and did a lap of the track to see if he could get round it. And he got around and he come back in. Well, all the crowd was still there. They were just sort of hiding in places and getting out of the rain. So they've all come back on the track and they're all cheering. So we all decided, let's do the last race. So we did. We went down. So everything sort of unofficial. We had somebody put up the start gate and everything. The whole fence is all lined with spectators. They dropped the gate. Away we went. And we've got into the lead on that one. We're about third and got into the lead on the first lap. And I'll come into the main straight, and there's a guy standing right in the middle of the main straight, waving both his arms full on in front of us, and I thought, oh my God, I've done it now. This is bloody official, I'm going to lose my licence and all that.
Yeah.
And so I've backed right off, and as I've got to him, he's just put his thumb up and says, yeah. He was just drunk as well. He's just been spectating, and he's got so excited that the race was back on, he's left the fence and got out and stood in the middle of the main straight. And I think, oh my God. Yeah.
Oh, God.
So, no, they were next level.
Oh, far out.
So,
Did you end up getting in trouble?
No, we didn't. And
Oh,
we won
God,
the race,
imagine if you tried to do that now.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You'd be banned for life.
Yeah.
Oh, far out. Yeah, that's full on. Oh,
Yeah.
God, it would have been cool. It would have been so cool. What a life.
Yeah.
So what would be the most favouriteest thing about riding, like racing sidecars?
For me, I love starts. I love the first corner action. I love the closeness and all that, the dicing, and I just, I absolutely love the challenge of it. Just how hard it is. Like people say about, this sport's so hard, but that's a good thing about it.
Yeah.
I like jumps, and it's interesting. We're sort of talking about how full on that was over there, and I listened to your podcast with Crasher, and he said, that he thought that I was his word, brutal and a bit full on when he first started racing. I thought, oh my God, you got no idea. So it was, But,
well, it's probably how you felt when you went over to the Europeans, and they were like that, and it was like, whoa.
100%. Yeah, that's right. And then you just, you sort of learn, and then it becomes normal. And, when I think about that, like Crasher said, that was when he first came out to do motocross. And so he'd come from road trials where you don't really have first corner dices and all that sort of thing. And,
well, you're lucky to see anyone else.
Yeah. So, and not, like, completely different sport, but them guys got incredible skill levels, but they just don't have that intensity and the battles sort of thing that we have. So, that was So, and I, like you said about the training, so I just like that. There's a saying, you would probably heard it: work beats talent when talent won't work.
Yeah.
And, over the years, I've managed to beat a lot of people just by working hard, not having the skills or that they've got. But if you just work at it, and I've always thought, well, training is something that you can control. So you can do as much as you want and be as good as you want, whereas there's other things in racing that you can't control. I mean, over the years, I've been criticised a bit for taking it too seriously, but that's not for everyone.
But look how long you've raced for too.
Yeah,
so
and if,
it's worked for you.
Exactly, and if you want to get results, like I sort of see it as two ways in Australia. You can just come out and have fun and just ride, and that's great.
Yeah.
But if you want to get results and you want to be serious at it, you've got to do it. And if you put your whole life into it and you're doing that, then you're going to race hard. You know what I mean? Like if I'm up at 6 o'clock every morning riding, even if it's rain, working all day, going to the gym at night, preparing the bike, coming out with new parts, new tyres, spending all this money, then I'm not going to, mess around when I race. I'm going to give it my best shot. I think, if you put in that commitment, then you've got to give it a good shot, and you've got to, if you've got a good passenger that's doing that work as well, you sort of owe it to him to race hard and race properly as well.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a team thing. You don't want to let the other person down.
That's right. You don't want to let them down. They're sort of relying on you as much as you are on them. So and I've had lots of people tell me, "Oh, you're really lucky that you got to win this and you got to win that."
No, there's never any luck.
The harder
I hate it when people say that.
Yeah.
I hate it when people say, "Oh, you're so lucky." It's like, no, I've given up a lot of stuff. I've sacrificed a lot.
That's right.
And I've worked my ass off to get here. There's no luck about it.
No, that's right. And like people talk about having passion for the sport, and there's different ways that you can look at that, isn't there? You can have passion where you would just putting everything into it, and
Yeah.
your whole life just revolves about riding a sidecar faster. Or you can be the person that thinks passion is just drinking and talking about how good you are.
Yeah.
And, then when it comes out, and then, make excuses when it doesn't all go right. So
Yeah.
there's sort of, and I think that's with any sport or any hard sport.
Oh, yeah. You always have the goners or the posers.
And to me, that's another really good thing about sidecars is how hard it is, because you're not going to get beaten by somebody that's, dad buys them a faster go-kart or a faster car in car race. Like a lot of other motorsport is really governed by how much money you put into it. With sidecars, I found out that if you're good enough, you can, like I say about Surges winning with one handbar broken off, and you just think, oh my God, and like I've won a lot of races in Australia and stuff, but one thing racing in Europe does is grounds you.
Yeah.
You just, once you realise them top guys, how good they are, and they've just got so much time on the track when you're racing against them, and then you think, oh my God, this is like another level again. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I suppose you just gain that a new whole thing of respect for, because you know how hard you're training and what you can do, and you think, shit, if I'm going this hard, those dudes must be going way hard. And like you can only imagine the time they've put into like perfecting everything, and the mistakes that they've made, and like all of the crap that they've had to go through to get to where they are.
Yeah. When I was listening to your podcast with Dan Foden, that was interesting when he was pointing out, the travelling and driving all the way back and on his own and stuff like that. And that's just normal, that's what guys have got to do at that level. And that's what, Brockhausen said about, well, they're not worried about you beating them at that top level because of what they've done to get there.
Yeah.
And they actually, if you go all right over there, you win their respect, and from doing the hard yards. So.
No, it's a whole different world, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And you said that you were trying to ring your wife from over there. Like, what does she think of it? Have you always had support from her and your family?
Yeah. No, so she's always been really good. So anything, she's supported 100%, and like we've talked about, to get good at anything, there's sacrifices, and it's not just you that's making the sacrifices. Your family makes sacrifices around you, and everybody. It's so she's been really good. And when I when I said I didn't have help, like no one's ever really paid for anything for me or done anything like that. I've sort of done it off my own back as far as family and that sort of thing, but not that they wouldn't. But my dad and mum, I just wouldn't take it because that's the way I'd like to do, is just do my own stuff. But then my dad followed it round, and I've just got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of Super 8s and videos from all over Australia. That was his thing, filming it.
Yeah, and my mum's the same. She just films everything for me, like everything.
So I could never have had more support from my parents, and my poor mum would be standing behind the fence, and I'd come back in and I'd see, would she cross her fingers for good luck so you didn't get hurt? She'd have all her fingers crossed together like her whole hands were bloody arthritic just about, and she's so worried about it. But it was never like, oh, do you really want to do this? There's bad crashes what you're having and stuff like that. It was always support. So
that's good.
That's a big thing, isn't it?
Oh yeah, well, it makes it heaps easier if you've got that, that support. And is with them also, they're scared, but they're not trying to project their fears onto you as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which helps.
And sometimes it's worse watching. It doesn't really, like, especially in Australia, it doesn't worry me racing too much, but when my brother would be racing and I'm out watching him, whether it was solos or sidecars, I'd be actually more nervous watching that than if I was out, doing it. So,
Well, because it's hard to know, I guess, when you're doing it, you can feel whether it feels safe or not. But when you're watching, you go, oh, that looked a bit sketchy. But to them, it probably didn't even feel sketchy.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes when you're the one riding, like pushing it on the edge is actually the fun part anyways.
Get a bit of a thrill out of it, bit of adrenaline. Whoa, shit, we nearly freaking stacked it then.
That's right. And that's another thing, like, where you and your passenger have got to be on the same page as well, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
you know, I've had some of the best passengers in Australia. I've had so many really good passengers, and like I say, especially Brian, Simon, and Dave. But you know, I think I've raced with about 35 passengers over the years, and so I've had some bad ones as well. You know, so it's you know, I've got the utmost respect for passengers and for how hard it is. But back when I was a B grader, I drove to Simon had broken his wrist, I think it was, and so I got another guy, and I drove to Ballarat, and I think I was leading the B grade championship, and I went to go out, and this guy had gone out and just got on the piss all Saturday night till early as the morning, you know, and I'm just doing it like I'm not going to win the A grade, but I want to do my best, you know.
Yeah.
And I've just put in so much for this. And halfway around the first lap of practice, going into right-hander, and he's saying to me, "Oh, I'm stuffed. I can't do this. I can't do this." I think, well, that was just a waste of trip. And it works both ways. So,
then you just take off flat out and fling them off the side and say, "Fuck you."
well,
that's what you get.
That's true. Yeah.
But you can't really do that, can you? Because then you're crashing too.
That's right. Yeah, that's true.
So if you could go back and do anything different, what would it be? Would there be anything you would do different?
Yeah, I never really go down that thought pattern because I always think, you know, and I'm a big one to think, well, I did everything with the best with what I knew at the time.
Yeah.
But you know, because hindsight's wonderful, isn't it? But if I did go back, like I said, the setting bikes up before you went to Europe, having a bike set up would be the biggest thing. Say that full season in '89, Joe Brockhausen said to us, he was a really hard guy, really good rider, and he had the attitude where you've got to prove yourself a bit, which is fair enough. And he said, you don't need the fastest motor and you don't need this and that. And then after the first, we had, you know, some good results, got some thirds in internationals and stuff like that. And by the end of the season, he was all keen. He said, right, come back next year and I'll set you up with a big motor and everything. But our money was over. So it's, you know, when I look back and think we got enough start money to get from meeting to meeting, it was good start money back in those days. But I still probably could have bought a house for what, you know, the whole setup going over there and buying the bus and the bikes and all the stuff. So
But you wouldn't have had that experience.
No, that's right.
Because that's what we think. We've only just bought a house like last year and we're like 40, whereas we would save 50 grand, go to Thailand and then live for a year, then come back, work again. Like we could have bought 3 houses by now.
That's right.
But now we struggle now, but we wouldn't have lived the life that we'd lived if we did that.
And there'd be nothing worse than getting older and thinking, you know, I hear so many people that I raced against in Australia back in the early days, and they say, "Oh, I wish I'd have done this, I'd have done that." Well, I don't have to say that at all because I've done everything the best I could possibly do, you know. And that was sort of my motto's always been right from the start. Just be the best you can be. Like, I don't think, you know, I can be world champion or get anywhere near any of the top guys, but if I can be the best I can be at the sport, that's
and have fun and be safe and, you know, do what you can do.
Yeah. You know, like it's just is an incredible sport. People have said to me, "Oh, you know, why have you done it so long? Why did, you know, all this commitment and all that?" And I say, well, if you just think about the best time that you've ever had in your life, and I said, if you think whatever the best feeling was, and you times that by 10, that's the feeling I had in some of them races in Europe. So, you know. And
you keep chasing it. You keep chasing that feeling.
It's a massive addiction. So,
and the thing is, if you weren't doing that, you'd probably be doing something else anyway. So
well, that's right.
You may as well do something and get really good at it.
Exactly. And, you know, there's worse things you can do than do a sport that, you know, takes fitness and commitment and teaches you a lot of stuff along the way, doesn't it?
No, for
That's
sure.
what they say, get your kids into sidecars and they'll never be able to afford to take drugs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so you've just had your surgery on your wrist and you're waiting for that to heal up. So you said you probably won't go back to racing, but...
Probably not, but
No.
like I say, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, I hope the sport keeps going forward, and that's another thing. The problem is when the sport starts to drop off, then people think, oh, it's not worth it. It's not worth me buying a new bike and buying the commitment. And you sort of see that, and then it's, it sort of grows on itself. Whereas you look at road trials, the way that's picked up the last few years, I look at what the guys are spending on outfits.
Yeah.
I think, oh my God,
like 40 grand.
Yeah, and you look at the first half a dozen in a road trial field, and you think, wow, they're all Grand Prix bikes,
Yeah.
So it's so that's worked really well. So those guys are doing something right, but yeah, just got to try and work out what we can do on our side to keep it encouraged. Over the years, back at one stage they had Barry Rawlack and some people were building bikes, and they got a whole junior class going really well, and that was good. And my way of thinking, I've always wanted to raise the level in Australia as much as I could to try and help. And I imported frames and VMCs, then MEFOs, and brought in sidecar parts and the mooses. I brought in Riger shocks for 25 years, all that sort of thing, just so that people could get the good parts and make money out of that. That's not a way you're going to get rich doing that, but it gets the good parts and just sort of raises the level. And I did a couple of coaching schools back in the day when there were lots of juniors. I did one at Gilman and one at Morgan, and that was just so good because the kids just, they soak it up. The one I did at Gilman, we had like a projector screen, and we sort of did half of it with just watching some videos and telling some stuff, and then they went out on the track, and the kids just pick it up so
they
quick.
would love that too.
Oh, yeah.
It was just love it.
Just so good. And then, we had, back in the 90s, I got sidecars into the Supercross at Wavell. We did that for 2 years. Things like that, just to try and get more exposure.
How was that? Riding a bloody sidecar around Supercross. That would have been hectic.
It was really good. So it was the jumps, to be honest, the faces and that were a bit big for us, but that was the same thing. I've got some old video on that. It was that the crowd just absolutely loved it because it was so different.
I would love to see those videos.
Yeah.
that would just be that'd be an eye opener, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, jeez. Imagine that. Nowadays, like, you have the big massive Supercross with like Jet and bloody Hunter Lawrence and all them, and I could just, like, if sidecars got into something like that, it would be huge exposure. Like, people would be like, what the hell? Like, that would be like the best thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
did you do
good.
Fink?
No.
You don't mean that.
So that's another one too for good exposure. But sidecars are out of that. Unfortunately, with their numbers, they've sort of even had to restrict the solos now, haven't they? So,
They did invite sidecars to go and do the new one that started up, that Jamalca.
Yes.
But I think the Greenies, they were having a bit of trouble with the Greenies, and they've cancelled, I think, this year's one.
Yeah, I wondered why that got cancelled.
I think it was something to do with, like, which is crap, because it's the dude's, it's his own property. Like, he's made this, and he's spent a lot of money on doing it. Like, put huge big shed, like full professional toilet blocks, everything on there. And the event was like one of the most well-run events, because I did solo, and it was so good. And they had live bands, and they had a stunt plane. Like, it was huge. It was a wicked, like, event. And I was super pumped to go there, like, to like get sidecars there. And he was like, yep, bring sidecars. And and then it got canned. It was like, oh, bugger.
Yeah.
But that would have been a good one too, to get some good exposure.
That's another thing that happens in Europe. Is just even apart from the racing, is the whole atmosphere of the whole event. They have the big beer tent and bands and parties and just the whole thing. Like when we went to Western Australia and did the King of the Cross, that was a bit like that too. So that was something different. They had like a whole outdoor party and everything there on the Saturday night, so people could camp there. And we've got to the track in the morning, there's all people walking around with hangovers and just like bikers and stuff, and just people you don't normally see at motocross. And you think, wow, how cool is this? But it was like a whole nother audience. They just loved it. So I think sometimes you do have to think outside the square. People are pretty spoiled now for what events they can do and what they can see. So it's really hard
And having different stuff too that can bring
you've
a
got to
different
provide
crowd
that
in.
entertainment, don't you? Yep.
And that makes people feel good. If people feel good when they've left an event and gone, oh, that was really cool, like that was different, and if you make people feel sort of like special, and people sort of feel a bit superstar-y, they love it. They lap it up.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe we could do something like that, but it all comes down to bloody money, I guess.
Well, it does. You look, the Sidecar Grand Prix is coming up in England, and the guy that's running that, it's costing him, I think, £125,000 to run the event, so $250,000.
Yeah.
So good on him, and it's a huge commitment. Yeah, that's what you're up against, isn't it? So.
The Bend, the motorsport park out here. They're building a motocross track out there.
Supposed to be building a motocross track.
So if we can get sidecars out there, I reckon that would be wicked.
Yeah,
because all the people that go out there and lots of well-off rich people go out there. We might get some good sponsors or some rich bloody, I don't know. I'm dreaming. You never know, though. You never know.
No, I've always, talked about that. Like with Trevor Anthony, we were talking, saying that, sidecars just need some fanatic promoter to come along that's got a lot of money and, just sees how good this sport is, because everyone says, when they see it in Europe and stuff, how spectacular it is. But, it's getting that off the ground, isn't it?
Yeah, you just need some rich person with heaps of cash that just loves it and gets obsessed and just let's make it huge.
And then if you got it out there and it sort of got to the masses, there'd be so many people getting involved, it would be huge. But now it's sort of like a bit of a closed shop unless you know friend or family that's doing it. You don't even know where the meetings are on.
I do try to spam everything with it. Spam the whole internet with it.
No, what you've been doing is really good. And I think, being realistic going forward, that social media is the way to go.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
That gets it out there, doesn't it?
And I feel like even like the first year that I was doing the social media, I'm thinking, I feel like I'm pushing crap uphill. Like I'm trying really hard to post all the time, but I feel like it's starting to have that positive effect now. Like I do feel like it's working. And I have had so many people like, it's awesome. We love seeing all the stuff on the ASA page, and more people, like all the followers and stuff, like it's doubled in followers in the last year, and and more people just seeing it and having it in front of their face all the time is geeing people up to like, come on, let's just go do it, So I think it's a slow process at the start, but I think it's starting to have a positive effect. Well, I hope
for
so.
Sure. No, you're doing a great job. That's the way to go.
Yeah, and even just doing this podcast, just trying to get, people listening and more interested. Like I got like 200 stickers printed out, like, and handed them all out over like the last couple of race meetings, and so everyone's got stickers for the podcast now. So I wonder if there's anyone
that's the same sort of thing. Whereas it takes off small, but then once it starts to grow, you look at other podcasts like Gypsy Tales and things like that. I don't know whether you've seen his, but that, years ago wasn't that big, and now it's a huge thing. That other Australian one, Live Motocross.
Inside Dirt, is it?
Yeah, and I think he just calls it Live Motocross.
And okay, yep.
And he has, Americans on and Supercross, and it's just so interesting getting perspective and that from different people. So,
and podcasts are getting, like, heaps of people are listening to them these days.
Yep.
Like, when you're just cruising in the car or to work or whatever, everyone just puts on a podcast. Because when we were even handing out the stickers, they were like, oh, yeah, we've heard of that. And I was like, oh, have ya? I'm like, oh, cool. They're like, yeah, we've been listening. I'm like, oh, cool.
No, actually, a couple of people have flicked me, a couple of viewers have got messages, and they said, what's this? Do you know anything about this?
Yeah.
I said, yeah. So there you go.
Oh, cool. Yeah, well, you've been dobbed in by everyone. They're like, get John on.
Yeah.
He'll have all the cool stories.
Yeah. Now they'll be thinking, oh, geez, he won't shut up. Don't get him on again.
It's good. Yeah, well, bloody hell, I think we've been going for 2 hours. You're the longest one so far.
Oh, God, I better wind it up, then people will be switching off.
Yeah. I better go feed my kids. They're probably hungry.
Good on you, Tash. Good work what you're doing.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks heaps for coming on.
Nah, cool.
No, really appreciate it. We might have to do a part 2 because I'm pretty sure you've got lots more to talk about.
No worries. Thanks, Dash. Have a
All
good
right,
one.
no worries. See ya.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Honestly, I couldn't wipe the smile off my face after chatting with John. I was just super pumped. I could listen to his stories all day. It's, yeah, just what a life. So cool. Massive thanks to John for jumping on, and I'm pretty sure I'll have another chat to him because he's just got so much to share. And yeah, thanks guys for supporting the podcast. And it's got way more streams than I ever would have expected. And yeah, I hope you guys are just enjoying it as much as I am. Cheers.